In 1993, 12 children were dropped off for a birthday party at a historic mansion-turned-campground in southern Illinois. The parents were told the party would be over by 5 p.m. By 5:15, the building was empty. No footprints, no noise, no trace. 32 years later, her little brother, now a trauma therapist, returns to the same decaying mansion. What he finds beneath the old stage rewrites everything. This is the story of the party that was never supposed to happen, and the 12 children who were never seen again. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe for more cinematic true crime stories, based on unsolved disappearances, long-buried secrets, and cases that still haunt entire towns. The wind curled through the trees like it knew something. The old Braxton estate had been quiet for decades, its sagging balconies and shuttered windows long forgotten by the families who once held tea on its sun-drenched porches. But in July of 1993, it came back to life for a single afternoon. A child's birthday party hosted in the grand ballroom of the West Wing, now retrofitted as a private campground lodge. 12 children arrived, all aged between 9 and 11. All from neighboring towns, all holding handmade paper invitations stamped with a glittery pink number 10. The birthday girl's name was Claire Weldon. It was her 10th birthday. Her mother had gone all out. Party hats, sheet cake, pin the tail on the unicorn, even a scavenger hunt mapped through the upper floors. The parents dropped their kids off at noon. Pickup was 5 sharp. Claire's mother waved off concerns about the mansion's condition. It had been refurbished by the campground owners just months earlier. At 4:45 p.m., Claire's mother took a phone call outside. When she returned to the ballroom at 5:02, the room was empty. No children, no sounds, only a cake with 12 untouched slices. And the words, "Happy Birthday." Claire half swiped off the frosting. One by one, the other parents pulled into the gravel lot. One by one, they walked inside, and one by one, they began to scream. When police arrived, they searched the entire building: attic, basement, ballroom, side halls, secret staircases. There were no signs of struggle, no broken windows, no blood. The front door had been locked from the inside. The Braxton estate was shut down permanently 2 weeks later. The Weldon family never recovered. Claire's father left. Her mother vanished a year later. Suicide, though her body was never found. But Claire's little brother, Evan Weldon, who was only 5 at the time and too young to attend, grew up with one goal: to understand what happened inside that house. 32 years later, in the fall of 2024, he returned to the ruins of the Braxton estate with blueprints, a flashlight, and a professional license in trauma counseling. What he found beneath the old ballroom stage, sealed beneath concrete and left off every public diagram, would not only reveal the truth, it would expose something much darker than anyone had ever imagined. July 10th, 2024. Location: Braxton Estate, Southern Illinois. The gate had been left open. Not that there was much of a gate left, just a rusted iron arch half swallowed by vines, its middle plaque barely legible in the summer light. Braxton Estate, it read in faded script, though the B had long since fallen off and now hung by a single rusted screw, swinging in the wind like a crooked tooth. Evan Weldon parked his rental car just beyond it, the tires crunching on gravel that hadn't shifted in decades. He shut off the engine but didn't move. The engine ticked as it cooled. The air was hot and motionless. He hadn't said her name aloud in years. Claire, his sister. She would have been 42 today, but she never turned 11. Because this house, the Braxton estate, is where she vanished, along with 11 other children during her 10th birthday party in the summer of 1993. They were never found. No bodies. No witnesses, not even a scream. Only one thing was recovered weeks later: A single birthday balloon, found deflated and tangled in the branches of a cottonwood tree 3 miles from the estate. And now Evan was back, 31 years later, 5 years sober. Still a therapist, still broken, still asking the same question that had gutted his childhood. What happened in that house? He stepped out into the heat, pulled a rolled blueprint tube from the back seat, and slung his backpack over one shoulder. Inside it, a floodlight, crowbar, gloves, first aid kit, portable GoPro rig, and the one thing that had brought him back here, a copy of the original architectural plans for the estate. These weren't from the public record. They were salvaged from a forgotten box in the Williamson County Archives, and they showed something the 1993 investigators never saw. A sealed chamber beneath the ballroom stage. No windows, no stair access, no record of construction permits. A dead space, deliberate. He made his way up the cracked flagstone path. Ivy clung to the porch rails. Vultures circled in the sky above the timberline, as if waiting. The mansion loomed ahead like a wound in the landscape. 3 stories tall, collapsing in slow ruin. Warped siding, shuttered windows. The double front doors hung unevenly on their hinges. Someone had spray-painted a faded red X over the main entrance. Foreclosure or fire risk. Maybe both. Evan didn't hesitate. He slipped in through a loose panel near the side window and stepped into the ballroom. The temperature dropped as soon as he entered. The air was still, stagnant. The grand room stretched wide and empty before him, its high ceiling cracked, its wooden floor warped by rot and time. The stage stood at the far end, its frame sagging, the curtains shredded and hanging in strips like wet tissue. He walked slowly toward it, heart beating louder now. The spot beneath the stage had always felt like the center of the mystery. It was where the children were last seen. It was where the lights flickered. It was where, according to one surviving staff member, a strange sound, like a radio clicking on, had been heard just before everything went dark. And now, standing here with the blueprint unfolded in his hand, Evan could see exactly where the sealed panel was. He knelt near the base of the stage, running gloved fingers along the floorboards. His flashlight caught a fine seam in the wood, too straight to be natural. He wedged in the crowbar and pulled. The panel groaned and gave. A hollow beneath. A rusted ladder disappearing into darkness. He clipped the GoPro to his chest, turned on his floodlight, and descended. The chamber was colder than the house above. Foam-insulated walls, soundproofing black and half-rotted, lined the small space. The floor was poured concrete, sloped toward a central drain. In one corner stood a small wooden bench, and carved into it, deep, erratic, were 12 names. He brushed his gloved hand across them. Some he didn't recognize. But one froze him. Claire. The letters were jagged, scraped into the wood like someone had done it in a hurry, maybe even in fear. Some of the names were first names, others only initials. He turned slowly, scanning the space. In the far corner, a stack of folding plastic chairs. Child-sized, 12 of them. Next to them, a pile of birthday hats, crushed and faded, but still dusted with glitter. And beyond that, a rusted filing cabinet. It took several hard tugs to pry the top drawer open. Inside, old photographs, Polaroids, 35mm prints, many dated in marker. July 10th, 1993. Evan's hands shook as he flipped through them. Kids lined up against the soundproofed wall, some smiling, others blindfolded, a few holding up numbered signs. One photo was labeled simply, 10 were invited. Another showed a circle of chairs on the ballroom stage above, 12 total. One was empty. On the back of that photo, someone had written, 12 came. Only one walked out. Numbers matter. His flashlight flickered for just a second, and then, quietly behind him, he heard it. A whisper, childlike. Close. He spun, flooding the chamber with light. Nothing. Then it came again. A soft, measured breath. 3 syllables. A voice not quite real. You weren't supposed to come back. July 10th, 2024. Location, sub-chamber, beneath Braxton Estate Ballroom. Evan didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. The whisper had been too clear, too close, to be anything imagined. It wasn't memory. It wasn't trauma. He'd counseled enough survivors to know how the mind plays tricks when it's overwhelmed. But this was something else. This had presence. He turned in a slow circle, his floodlight tracing across the foam-padded walls and the row of child-sized chairs. Nothing moved, but something lingered. There was a stain on the 3rd rung of the ladder he hadn't noticed on the way down. Dark, fresh, and unmistakable. Blood. Small. A smear. Not a drop. He snapped a photo with his phone, then crouched to study the floor again. A shallow drain sat at the room's center, partially clogged with dust and hair. Near the cabinet, he found another Polaroid tucked beneath the bench. It showed a girl in a yellow dress, sitting cross-legged on the concrete, head bowed. The back read, "Claire, round 1. His hands tightened around the photo until it bent. He needed to get out, document the evidence, call someone, not the press, not yet, but someone who could force this case open again. A cold case investigator, a forensic archivist, anyone who'd believe this was more than just nostalgia or a grieving brother's obsession. He climbed back up the ladder slowly, heart thudding harder with each rung. He didn't know what was worse, the silence, or the feeling that it wasn't alone down there. The ballroom hadn't changed in the hour he'd been below. Same broken light filtering through the stained windows. Same sickly dust in the air. But the atmosphere had shifted. It felt darker, even in daylight. The curtain above the stage rustled softly, though there was no breeze. Evan stepped away from the trapdoor, turned back toward the front of the house, and froze. There was something new on the wall. A corkboard, warped, partially rotted. It hadn't registered before. He walked closer. A single tack still held a fragment of construction paper. "Happy 10th birthday, Claire." There was a faint fingerprint in the corner. Not dust, not soot, ash. Below the sign, on the warped baseboard, someone had scratched a symbol into the wood. A circle. 12 tiny lines, like a clock with no hands, or a game board. He backed away, unsettled by how deliberate it felt. Someone had designed this space. Someone had built it to contain children, and that someone hadn't just been hiding them, they'd been watching. He returned to the motel just after sundown. The box he found beneath the floorboards, heavy-duty plastic, industrial sealed, sat on the nightstand beside a Gideon Bible and a flickering lamp. He had wiped it clean before putting it in the car. Labeled faintly across the lid, beneath a layer of dust, were the initials. CW. Inside the box were 3 things. A high-8 camcorder cassette, labeled Claire Final. A stuffed rabbit, missing its left eye. A folded letter, sealed in a Ziploc bag. He opened the letter first. The handwriting was unmistakably Claire's, childlike but legible. Evan had seen the same curved letters in her old notebooks years ago. At the bottom was the date, July 9th, 1993. "Hide it if I'm not back. Burn it if he finds it. Don't tell him I told." He read the letter once, then again. "I didn't invite all of them. 2 boys came I didn't know. They said they were friends of Sam. They laughed too loud. One had yellow teeth. They brought the box down, said it was a game, said we'd play the numbers, chairs in a circle, 12. I think I was supposed to pick, but I didn't. So he did. He said, only one gets out, the one who doesn't scream." Then he turned off the lights. Evan sat perfectly still. The room felt like it had lost all its oxygen. His sister hadn't vanished. She'd been trapped in a game, and someone had been running it. He took the cassette out to his car and slotted it into the old combo high-8 player he'd rigged in the passenger seat, part of a digital restoration kit he used in his trauma practice. The screen buzzed, then flickered. A shaky handheld clip, birthday streamers, a cake with 10 candles, music playing faintly in the background, Claire's voice giggling. Then a hard cut, new frame. The same camcorder, but the room is dark now. The 12 chairs are in view. A plastic box sits in the center. A man's voice, low, calm, says, "Pick one." Claire's voice small. "No." Then I'll pick." A child begins to cry. Another says, "This isn't funny anymore." The screen cuts to black. And then one last line, whispered, "Numbers matter." The tape ends. Evan ejected it and sat in silence. Something about the voice, the way it spoke, felt rehearsed, performed. It wasn't panic. It wasn't even excitement. It was clinical, like someone conducting an experiment. That night, Evan called someone he hadn't spoken to in years. Detective Ana Morales, retired from Illinois State Police, now working cold cases part-time. She answered on the second ring. "Morales," she said. Evan didn't waste time. "I found the room," he said. "It's real, and I think someone else was down there after they closed the house." Pause. "Where?" "The Braxton estate, the ballroom, under the stage." She went quiet. Then, "You still have the tape?" "Yes." "Don't share it. Not yet. I'll be there by morning." July 11th, 2024. Location: Illinois State Police Cold Case Division, Springfield. Detective Ana Morales didn't blink as the footage ended. She sat perfectly still in the cramped conference room, lit only by the soft blue glow of the portable screen on the table. The faint hum of an old HVAC unit was the only sound. Evan sat across from her, watching her face instead of the video. The tape had ended the same way both times. A girl screams. A plastic chair scrapes across concrete. Then, "Numbers matter?" And silence. When Morales finally spoke, her voice was flat. "Where's the original camcorder?" "Gone. Just the tape was left, sealed in the box." Evan gestured toward the table. "There was a note in Claire's handwriting and a stuffed rabbit I remember from her room. I can get the DNA swabbed if you need it." "I will," she said. "But I already believe you." That surprised him. She leaned forward. "Because you're not the first person who's brought me something from that house?" Evan straightened. "What do you mean?" 3 years ago," she said, "a contractor renovating a farmhouse in Benton found a rotted mattress and a child's drawing behind the drywall." The handwriting matched one of the Braxton kids, but it was brushed off, classified as a coincidence. No prints, no chain of custody. The case stayed closed. She tapped the photo of the circle of chairs. "But what you found, the sealed space, the tape, the name scratched into the bench, that's not a ghost story. That's evidence." She stood and paced once around the room. "You said the blueprint wasn't on public record?" Evan nodded. "I found it in a mislabeled archive box. It showed the sealed chamber. There was no permit, no tax record, nothing linking that addition to any contractor. So someone added it quietly, privately, for a reason." Morales paused at the door. "I need to make a call to the regional field office. You should come with me." "Where?" She looked him dead in the eye. "Back to Braxton. By mid-afternoon, the estate had been cordoned off. State police had secured the perimeter. Crime scene tape curled in the wind, anchored to rusted porch beams. Evan waited near the gate while Morales and a younger field tech named Detective Ian Becker surveyed the ballroom. They had strict orders not to disturb anything below. Evan leaned on the hood of Morales's cruiser, watching as clouds rolled low over the trees. A memory had started to gnaw at him, something from the weeks after Claire disappeared, something he hadn't thought about in years. It wasn't the search parties or the vigils. It was the gift bag. His mother had returned from the estate with a single plastic bag. It had been handed to her by one of the deputies. Recovered items, they said. Evan remembered digging through it later. It had some cheap party favors, a paper crown, and a folded-up paper invitation. He remembered the design. 12 balloons. 11 were black. 1 was red. He remembered asking Claire about it before the party. She told him, "The red one's me. The others are the numbers." That had made no sense at the time, but now it made his skin crawl. Inside the chamber, Becker knelt beside the bench. 12 names, he said to Morales. Some fresh, some old, all scratched in. One of them says 7. Just that. In all caps, Morales crouched beside him. Read them off. He did. Claire, Sam, Ezra, Paolo, Liz, MS Tara 7, Key, Jill, CW. She pointed at CW, Claire Weldon? Becker shook his head. That one's older. Carved differently. These others were gouged in. That one looks burned, like someone branded it. Morales stood and examined the ceiling. A vent shaft, no fan, ran up behind the foam, possibly a sound duct, possibly something else. What the hell was this room used for? Becker looked at her. Some kind of conditioning? Morales didn't answer. Her phone buzzed. She stepped away and answered. Morales. A pause, then her brow furrowed. Evan watched her from the top of the ladder as she went stiff. When she came back, her face had changed. That was the Benton Sheriff's Office. A local salvage crew started clearing out an abandoned warehouse west of here. It's owned by a defunct shipping company, same one that used to manage the delivery contracts for Braxton's estate during the early 90s. Becker straightened. And they found a box. Another pause, with one of the children's names burned into it. They left the estate just before dusk. Evan rode with Morales in silence. The cruiser cut through country roads that felt like old film reels. Faded barns, rusted signs, forgotten gas stations with one working pump. Everything looked the same as it did in 1993, and that sameness unnerved him. At the warehouse site, yellow tape had already been strung. The crew lead, a woman with sunburned cheeks and oil-stained gloves, met them at the edge of the bay doors. You the detective? Morales nodded. What did you find? The woman pointed to a tarp. It was chained shut. Took us 40 minutes just to open it. Inside, boxes, labeled. Some by year, others just with numbers. We opened the smallest one. She pulled back the tarp. Inside sat a child's suitcase. Pink, weather-worn, a name tag still barely visible on the zipper. Liz C. Morales stared. Evan turned away, suddenly dizzy. Anything else? Morales asked quietly. The woman hesitated. There was something taped to the lid. It fell off when we moved it. She handed Morales a piece of yellowed tape with a torn edge of paper still attached. On it, written in red marker, Round 2. July 12th, 2024. Location: Illinois State Police Evidence Lab, Springfield. The suitcase from the warehouse was laid open under high-definition lighting. Every inch of it was being cataloged, measured, photographed, swabbed. Morales stood behind the glass divider with Evan, watching the forensics techs work in gloved silence. Inside the pink vinyl suitcase, a folded red sweater, a white sock with faded cartoon stars, a friendship bracelet made of multicolored beads, and something that didn't belong in a child's bag. A laminated index card. One word printed on it in block letters. Eliminated. Morales murmured under her breath. This wasn't just storage. Evan leaned closer to the glass. It was inventory. One of the techs flagged something in the inner lining. They peeled back a stitched flap, revealing a metal clasp embedded in the suitcase frame. A rusted latch. Inside it, a tiny strip of undeveloped photographic film. Morales looked at Evan. Can your lab digitize that? He nodded. If it hasn't degraded too far. I want it scanned. She turned to the lead tech. And run every fiber in that case. I want soil samples, pollen traces. If that thing's been underground or near a specific environment, we'll know. The tech nodded. Already in progress. Morales turned back to Evan. You said something about the party invitation, the one with the red balloon? I remember it, he said. Not in full, but clearly. 11 black balloons, 1 red. Claire told me the red one was her. The others were the numbers. The numbers, Morales repeated it softly. Like it was a system? Or a ritual. They didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she stepped out into the hallway with him. You told me once, she said, that Claire was always afraid of the basement. Evan nodded slowly. She said there was a man down there, he said. Tall, pale, always waiting. My parents chalked it up to nightmares. And she still wanted the party at Braxton? No, Evan said quietly. She didn't. That night, Evan couldn't sleep. The motel room was too quiet. The light from the highway signs flickered through the curtain like Morse code. His phone buzzed once around midnight. A single text. Unknown number. No name. You're too close. Stop before round 3 begins. He stared at it for a long time. Then he got up, booted his laptop, and began reviewing the digitized documents from the Braxton Family Trust, deeds, contractor logs, archived donations. Most were scrubbed of any useful detail. But then something caught his eye. A foundation filing from 1992, under a shell company named Crowning Numbers Incorporated, listed as a donor to Braxton Children's Enrichment Facility. Attached was a mission statement. Structured enrichment for high-potential minds, private instruction, controlled scenarios, group calibration, 1 remains. 1 remains. Evan opened a second file from the police archives. It was an unofficial report filed by a deputy named John Reinert, who was pulled from the original 1993 Braxton case weeks after the children vanished. His final note said, "This wasn't abduction. It was selection." There were always only supposed to be 12. The rest of the report had been blacked out. The following morning, Morales was waiting in the lab conference room when Evan arrived. She looked tired, but alert. I had them run handwriting comparison last night, she said. And? She placed a sheet of paper on the table. 2 sentences, one written by Claire in a 1992 birthday thank you card. The other from the hidden note in the suitcase. Same angle, same curl on the lowercase g, same pressure signature. Claire wrote the note inside the suitcase marked round 2, but that suitcase was labeled with Liz's name. She survived the first round, Evan whispered, and was made to help prepare the second. Morales nodded, which means she didn't die the night of the party. She flipped the page, and neither did the others. Later that afternoon, they drove 2 hours south to the old campground property where the Braxton Estates event overflow was once hosted. The field was abandoned now. Waist-high grass, a collapsed cabin, a caved-in amphitheater stage. Morales stood at the edge of the overgrown trail and motioned Evan forward. This is where the last known trace was found, she said. A balloon, tangled in the trees. 3 miles from the mansion, it was dismissed as wind drift. But what if it was something else? They walked deeper into the trees. At the center of a clearing stood an old stone circle, once a fire pit. Evan knelt and brushed away the leaves. A series of small square tiles were embedded in the stone ring, worn by time and moss. One tile still bore a faint number, 11. Another tile, opposite it, had been replaced. It bore a single letter, scratched in with a blade. C. Morales stood beside him. Claire made it out here, she said. Maybe others did too. Evan looked at her, heart sinking. Then where are they? July 13th, 2024. Location, Benton Salvage Facility, Illinois. The air smelled like rust and mildew. Rows of wooden pallets lined the interior of the old shipping warehouse. Stacks of plastic containers, broken crates, mold-darkened cardboard boxes. But one area had been taped off entirely. A corner walled with industrial shelving where 3 identical child-sized trunks had been found. Morales flashed her badge and ducked beneath the tape. Evan followed close behind. Each trunk was numbered. Trunk 03, KY Trunk 07, SAM Trunk 09, unknown. All 3 had matching clasps, recessed handles, and child-safe locks. All 3 were lined with soft foam and equipped with strange fixtures, hooks, rubber restraints, plastic rings embedded in the walls. Trunk 03 contained a child's shoe. Trunk 07 had a broken Viewmaster toy, still loaded with a cartoon reel. Trunk 9 held only one item, a red birthday hat, folded flat and stained with something dark. Morales didn't speak. She didn't need to. The children hadn't simply been hidden. They'd been processed. In the trunk labeled KY, a false panel was discovered beneath the foam lining. Evan crouched with one of the techs as they gently lifted it, exposing a thin compartment behind the base. Inside, a wax envelope. Morales opened it carefully and removed a torn slip of yellow cardstock, a game scorecard. 12 names were printed in childlike scrawl down one side. Next to each, a number of vertical slashes. Some 4, some 5, some none. Claire's name had no marks. Next to Sam, 4 vertical lines were crossed through with a red X, and next to, a small drawing of an eye. Evan whispered, "They were keeping score." Morales frowned. "Of what?" A tech leaned in. "It's like tallies from rounds, like tracking behavior, reactions." "Reactions to what?" Evan asked. Another pause. Then the tech said what no one else wanted to. "Fear." Later that evening, Morales called in a favor from a retired profiler she trusted, Dr. Helen Argento, formerly with the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit. They met her at a secure analysis lab in Springfield. The images of the trunks, the symbols, the scratched tally marks, and the tape recordings had all been transferred for review. Dr. Argento's eyes were sharp and expressionless. She flipped through the materials like she'd done it 1,000 times before. "This wasn't abduction," she said finally. "This was a trial." Evan leaned forward. "A trial? Structured trauma exposure. See this?" She tapped a freeze frame of the tape showing the circle of chairs. They were seated facing inward. That's classic controlled confrontation. Someone was monitoring their responses. Who screamed first, who froze, who followed instructions. "You mean it was a test?" Morales asked. Argento nodded. "Multiple rounds. Not all children made it through. Some were marked as eliminated. Others were recorded, categorized, possibly moved." "Moved where?" Evan asked. Dr. Argento hesitated. Then, if this was run like a closed behavioral study, the survivors may have been reassigned. Evan's heart twisted. Claire, Liz, the others, they could be alive? Argento didn't answer. She just turned the page. Later, alone in the motel again, Evan couldn't sleep. He kept picturing that drawing. 12 chairs, one empty. The red balloon. The circle of stones with the etched letters C. Something inside him had started to turn. Some gut-deep knowing that he hadn't been ready to admit before. Claire hadn't been taken. She hadn't been eliminated. She had been chosen. And whatever round 3 was, it hadn't happened yet. His phone buzzed again. A message. Same unknown number as before. "She made it through, but you won't." Attached was a file. A JPEG. Evan opened it. It was a Polaroid. Claire, older now, maybe early 20s, blank stare, hair pulled back, dressed in plain clothes, standing in front of a numbered door, room 104. The caption, handwritten beneath, promoted, observation wing. Evan gripped the phone until his knuckles went white. Someone had kept her alive, but not as a victim, as something else. July 14th, 2024. Location, Motel Riverview, room 103. Illinois. Evan barely blinked for an hour. The Polaroid was real. He'd scanned it under UV light, checked it against facial recognition archives from Claire's childhood photos. The software gave it an 87% match, allowing for age, facial maturation, and lighting. His sister was alive, but something was wrong in her eyes. Not pain, not terror, something worse. Detachment. At 3:12 a.m., he finally called Morales. She answered on the first ring. "I just got the photo," he said. "Claire's alive, and someone sent it to me like a warning." He emailed it to her mid-call. She opened it in silence. Then, "That's not a warning. That's a power play." Evan sat on the edge of the bed, the air conditioner humming like static. "Room 104, he said. "Think it's part of a facility." Morales' voice was steady. "Could be anywhere, but there are clues. Look behind her. There's a logo on the door plate, barely visible. I'll send it to our enhancement team." And the handwriting? Already flagged. Matches the earlier eliminated card from the suitcase. Evan closed his eyes. "What if this is round 3? He whispered. By late morning, the lab team confirmed it. The symbol behind Claire in the photo, a vertical key through a circle, belonged to a now-defunct behavioral health facility once known as Crowning Promise, operated under the same umbrella as Crowning Numbers, Inc. It had shut down in 1996, after several code violations, one of which included allegations of unethical group simulation scenarios, involving children from state homes and private psychiatric referrals. The last known address was a rural complex 30 minutes outside of Harrisburg, Illinois. Morales gripped the wheel tightly as they approached the overgrown gates that afternoon. The old sign, faded to bone gray, still hung crooked above the entrance. Crowning Promise Developmental Retreat. The guardhouse was empty, windows shattered. Ivy choked the outer fences. "This place looks dead," Evan murmured. "Not dead," Morales said. "Just buried." Inside the main building, time had collapsed. Old wheelchairs rusted in corners. Clipboards hung limply from shattered hooks. Children's drawings still clung to faded bulletin boards. Stick figures in front of numbered doors, under banners that read, "Stay inside until it's time." Evan ran his hand over one crumbling poster. "We all go through the rounds. That's how we evolve." They moved deeper down the hall, flashlights sweeping the dim corridors. Morales checked her phone. This wing had a room 104, third hallway, observation section. They reached it slowly. The door had no lock. Inside, the room was sterile. No windows. Foam-lined walls, a narrow metal bed. Surveillance cameras in each corner, disabled now, wires cut. On the floor, beneath the bed, another photo. This one showed Claire sitting with another child, possibly Liz, side by side in small uniforms with numbers sewn into the sleeves. Claire's was number 1, Liz's was number 5. Morales whispered, "They weren't victims." Evan finished the sentence. "They were subjects." They found the file room 2 doors down. Most of the drawers were rusted shut, but one was still partially intact. Morales opened it carefully. Inside, manila folders, labeled with initials and numbers. She pulled one, number 7, SM, Sam Martinez, then number 1, CW, Claire Weldon. She opened Claire's. Inside were dozens of handwritten evaluations, every entry stamped with the word retained or failed. A few chilling excerpts stood out. Subject continues to show elevated compliance under duress. Fear suppression levels ideal. Recommendation, round 3 advancement. Subject displays increasing tendency to observe others during stress simulations. Emerging potential as moderator role. Subject 01 has stopped crying entirely. 3 weeks without emotional regression. At the bottom of the last page, transfer to control. Wing approved date August 2nd, 1993. Authorized by D. Wren. Evan stared at the name. "I've seen this signature before." Morales looked up. "Where?" He pulled out the folded letter Claire had hidden in the trap-door box. On the bottom corner, barely visible in the paper grain, was the same signature. D. Wren. "She warned me," Evan whispered. Even as a child, she knew his name. They didn't leave the facility until sundown. On their way out, Morales found one last item buried beneath a water-damaged toy chest in the adjacent playroom. A VHS tape labeled Round 3, Initiation. Day 1, August 5, 1993. Morales tucked it into her satchel. Evan stood in the hallway, staring at the empty room 104. "I think Claire was promoted," he said, "but not as a survivor." Morales looked back at him. "As what then?" He didn't answer, but the answer was already forming. As someone who now ran the game. July 15th, 2024. Location, Illinois State Archives, Springfield. The VHS tape wasn't blank. A grainy image filled the screen inside the evidence lab's analog viewing room. A dim hallway, a series of doors, each painted with large block numbers. A voice, male and steady, narrated without emotion. "Round 3, Initiation Day 1. Subject count, 12. Room observation begins at 0700. Control subject is active." The camera cut to a girl standing inside room 104. Claire, 10 years old, pale, her eyes fixed blankly ahead. She was dressed in plain clothing, her number 01, stitched onto the front pocket. Behind her stood a man in a white coat, face blurred, voice muffled. He leaned in to whisper something in her ear. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She simply nodded. The video cut to static. Morales stopped the playback and exhaled hard. She wasn't just surviving in there, she said. She was participating. Evan stared at the frozen image of Claire's face. She looked like herself, but she didn't. Her expression was glass, her body still. He whispered, "She became what they made her." Later that morning, they met with a specialist from the Illinois Department of Historical Records, who confirmed something stunning. D. Wren was Dr. Douglas Wren, a behavioral theorist who disappeared in late 1993 after a state inquiry into unlicensed child testing facilities. Rumors suggested he fled overseas. Others believed he faked his death in a fire at a different experimental site in Oklahoma. But what Morales discovered next changed everything. She pulled up an internal transfer memo from 1994, buried in a collection of insurance paperwork tied to an orphanage-turned-research campus in upstate New York. The name listed under Facility Administrator, Claire Weldon, alias Clara Ward. "I don't believe this," she said. "They didn't just keep her, they gave her his name." His role, Evan's heart started pounding. "She never escaped," he said. "She graduated." By early evening, Morales got a call from forensics. The photographic strip recovered from Liz's suitcase had been digitized. It contained 6 sequential images, all taken within the same room, room 104. But the walls were covered in chalk drawings, all childlike but deeply disturbing. Tall figures with stretched limbs, watches with no hands, red X's painted over faces. In the final frame, Claire was seen kneeling beside another girl, Liz, older now, her hand placed gently on Liz's shoulder. Liz was crying. Behind them, painted across the back wall in a child's hand, "No one else leaves." That night, Evan found himself walking alone. The motel air felt too thick, the walls too close. He paced the back lot, near the chain-link fence and gravel shoulder that sloped toward the riverbed. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Another image. This time, a group photo. The original 12 children from the 1993 party, lined up on the mansion stage. Some were mid-smile, others looked uneasy. In the corner stood Claire, expressionless again, but one child had been scratched out. The same red ink. Evan scrolled to the message that followed. One always fails. The rest become the next round. He swallowed hard. Then another message came through. Return to the house. The rest is waiting for you. Back inside, Morales was reading the final entries from the subject logs recovered at the Crowning Promise facility. One folder contained a handwritten letter never sent. It was from Liz, addressed to the boy with the red sneakers. I hope you never come back here. But if you do, I left you the map. Look under the last chair. Number 12. Morales whispered, Evan, what kind of party ends with one chair left standing? Evan didn't answer. Because he already knew. The kind that isn't over yet. July 16th, 2024. Location, Braxton Estate, Southern Illinois. They arrived just before dawn. The rising sun cast a pale orange over the sagging roofline and shuttered windows of the Braxton house. Morning fog clung low to the grass, pooling in the places the earth had sunk, where, 3 decades ago, a party had been held, and 12 children had walked inside. Only one chair had remained. Morales moved ahead first, flashlight sweeping through the darkened ballroom. Evan followed slowly, the silence pressing in like a second skin. Neither of them spoke until they reached the floorboards where the trap door had been found. Morales knelt beside the bench and ran her hand under the final seat. Chair 12. A faint metallic click. Her fingers closed around something cold. She pulled out a narrow black envelope, wrapped in twine, sealed with red wax bearing the symbol, a key inside a circle. Inside was a folded map. The path was hand-drawn, marked not in streets, but in rounds. Round 1, the ball round. 2, the room round 3. The watch round 4, the mirror round 5, the mask round 6, the switch round 7, the witness round 8, the fire round 9, the gift round 10, the selection round 11, the door round 12. The crown. Evan stared at it, chilled. 12 children, 12 rounds. And we're only now at round 11, Morales said softly. The door. They descended again into the hidden chamber. The air was different now, less stale, more disturbed. Something had shifted since their last visit. Evan scanned the ceiling vent again and noticed the screws had been freshly turned. He climbed onto the bench, unfastened the cover, and reached up. His hand brushed something wrapped in plastic, a cassette tape. The label read, "For EW, final game. Don't play alone." He passed it down to Morales, his hands shaking. "There's a player upstairs," she said. "Back room near the piano." They climbed in silence. The ballroom looked even emptier in the early light. Dust motes hung like ash in the air. Morales found the portable cassette player where it had been left on an old windowsill. She loaded the tape, pressed play. A girl's voice crackled through the speaker. Young, familiar. "Hi, Evan. If you found this, then I didn't fail." "Claire," he froze. "They made me watch the others. Not just once, over and over, like it was a test, but it wasn't. It was a story, and they needed me to learn the end. They said if I could keep going, I'd become the next one, the one who chooses. But I remembered something you said when we were little, that there's no such thing as real magic. Only people pretending to be more powerful than they are." A long pause. "So I stopped pretending. If you're here, then you're almost at the crown. That's the final one, the one where only one walks away. You need to find the red door. It's in the house, beneath everything. And if it opens, you can end it. But don't bring anyone else. They always take the witness." Click. The tape ended. They stood in silence for what felt like a full minute. Then Morales said, "She never left this place. She became this place," Evan replied. They returned to the basement. Behind the far wall, near the crumbling concrete, they found it. A patch of paneling with warped edges. different from the rest. Morales struck it with a crowbar. It buckled. Behind it, a red door, small and windowless, with a circular keyhole the size of a coin. No handle. Only a sentence carved into the wood. Whoever wears the crown decides the end. Evan turned to Morales. You still have the key symbol. She held up the wax seal from the envelope. They matched. They broke for air before returning, neither willing to face what might be behind that door until they had backup. But as they stepped out into the morning light, Morales's phone rang. She answered with a clipped "Morales." The voice on the other end spoke fast. It was the Benton County medical examiner. You asked us to scan the DNA from the old suitcases, right? Yes. We processed the hair sample from trunk 03. It doesn't belong to a child. What? We ran it twice. The DNA belongs to a woman in her late 30s. The markers match a close relative of Claire Weldon. Morales froze. You have any idea who that might be? Evan looked at her, confused, but Morales was already shaking her head slowly. No, she said, but I think we just found who really wore the crown. July 16th, 2024. Location, Braxton Estate, sub-level access tunnel. The red door opened at 2:37 p.m. It took Morales half an hour to melt the wax seal and pry the panel open with a chisel and crowbar. The latch clicked like a deadbolt in an old tomb. Behind it, darkness, not just unlit, a kind of black that absorbed the light from their flashlights. A long, narrow tunnel stretched into the earth. The walls were concrete, but curved, as if they had been shaped intentionally. Ducks ran along the ceiling. Scrape marks lined the floor. And then the sound started. A low click, click, click in the distance, like someone tapping metal on stone. Evan's chest tightened. He followed behind Morales, his breath sharp and fast as the path angled downward, deeper into what felt like another structure entirely. After 100 yards, the tunnel opened into a massive circular chamber. At its center, 12 chairs in a perfect ring, all empty. On the far wall, a viewing window, shattered. Behind it, another room. Inside it, cabinets, tape decks, filing cabinets, and in the far corner, a mannequin, dressed like a little girl in a party dress. The number 1 was stitched into its chest. Morales whispered, "This was the crown room." The chairs weren't identical. Each one bore a brass plate with an etched name, some faded, some clear. Claire Liz Sam Kai Margot, Tyler Joy Ash Robin Mira, blank. Morales touched the last one. The nameplate had been scratched out entirely. Underneath, carved into the wood in jagged strokes. The next. Evan turned slowly, the air around him cold. What was the point of this? Morales didn't look at him. They made her choose, she said. 12 children, 1 crown. The game ends when one child is willing to become the architect. A sound echoed from the far tunnel. Footsteps. They weren't alone. They moved back into the observation room and began collecting everything that could fit in Morales's evidence bag. Most of the files were too rotted to read, but one was sealed in plastic. Evan ripped it open. It was a psychological report, dated August 12, 1993. Subject 01 has completed 12 scenario simulations, each successful. No behavioral collapse. Repeated exposure has produced absolute obedience. In final session, Subject 01 was given authority to select from the remaining peers. Her decision was unprompted, cold, and final. The control group terminated on schedule. Recommendation, Subject 01 designated as next facilitator. Psychological rewrite to begin August 20th. Evan felt sick. She wasn't the victim, he whispered. She was the final test. Suddenly the lights flickered. Somehow, against all logic, power surged to one corner of the crown room. A red light blinked above a panel labeled Simulation Mode. Stand by. A new voice crackled through a wall speaker, feminine, older, measured. If you're hearing this, then the house has been reopened, and the crown is unclaimed. Morales stepped back. What the hell is this? The voice continued. Rounds are not about punishment. They are about endurance. Fear is the truest mirror, and the one who wears the crown sees everything. Welcome to round 13. Then a timer appeared on the wall screen. 2:59:59. Evan stared at it. They never intended to stop, he whispered. This was never about 1993. This was a loop. The walls vibrated softly, doors unlocking somewhere deeper in the compound. Another hallway revealed itself. Morales drew her sidearm. You coming? She said. Evan didn't hesitate. They followed the tunnel into what appeared to be a dormitory. 15 rooms, all numbered. Room 13 was missing its door. Inside, rows of drawings tacked to the walls. Childlike again, but with eyes blacked out, hands held to mouths, mouths erased. One drawing showed a figure in a red crown. Another showed Claire, recognizably older, sitting in a room surrounded by cameras. Her mouth was open. A speech bubble had been drawn. I picked you. Evan couldn't breathe. I think she chose me, he said. Morales didn't answer, because she just found something at the foot of the bed. A pair of red sneakers. Evan knelt down. They were his. July 16th, 2024, location, Braxton Estate, sub-level dormitory. The sneakers were dusty, but unmistakably his. Red canvas with frayed laces and one melted eyelet. Evan remembered crying the day they went missing, his mother telling him they'd look again tomorrow. But they never found them. He was 5 years old when he wore them. Claire would have been 10. She took them, he murmured. She brought them here. Morales knelt beside him. Or someone else did. Someone who knew you'd come back. He looked at her, eyes dark. They've been planning this for 30 years. The timer on the wall screen continued its quiet countdown. 01:47:12. Morales swept the dorm with her flashlight. The rooms were stripped bare except for drawings, uniforms, and one more item that made her stomach tighten. A mirror, fractured, bolted above a sink in room 07, scratched into the glass. The ones who watched became the ones who decided. She stared at her reflection, split by the crack, her badge glinting over her heart. She turned away before the image twisted again. Let's finish this, she said. At the end of the hallway, behind a fire door with a bent handle, they found the final chamber, circular, empty, silent, except for the pedestal in the center. On it, a single red crown made of reinforced resin, wrapped in copper wire and film reels. Underneath was a laminated photo. Claire, age 24, expression blank, standing in front of this very crown. Next to the photo, a sheet of instructions. Round 13. Initiation. Subject enters alone. Facilitator observes. Subject is asked to choose, forget or replace. The one who forgets becomes the next outsider. The one who replaces becomes the crown. Evan read it 3 times before speaking. They weren't just testing fear, they were installing obedience. Morales shook her head. They were erasing guilt, creating something new out of the survivors. Not survivors, he said. Recruits. A speaker crackled overhead. That same calm voice returned. But this time, it was Claire. You made it. Evan froze. Claire! I watched you in the house. I knew you'd find the door. I knew you'd still be curious. He moved toward the center of the room. Morales just behind. I didn't leave because I couldn't. I left because someone had to stay behind. That's how the rounds work. One stays, the others forget. Evan clenched his fists. You chose this? I just stopped fighting it. You will too. Morales raised her voice. Where are you, Claire? No response. The lights dimmed. The chamber lights flickered once. Then the walls began to rotate, revealing hidden screens. On each one, footage from 1993. The party, the children, one by one, each round unfolding like a ritual. Round 1, the ball. Children blindfolded, reaching into black boxes. Round 2, the room, silent stare contests, faces trembling. Round 5, the mask, children made to wear unsettling animal heads. Round 8, the fire, matches, candles, a trust exercise gone wrong. Round 10, the selection, Claire alone, asked to name one child. She says, "Morsam." The screen cuts to black. Evan stares blankly. She sacrificed them. Morales swallowed. Or she thought she had to. The pedestal pulsed red. Beneath it, a drawer opened with a hiss. Inside, a sealed envelope, addressed in handwriting identical to Claire's childhood journal. To Evan, before you decide. He opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photo, a candid shot. Claire at the birthday party, mid-laugh, cake on her cheek. The other kids behind her, unposed, messy, human. On the back, only 6 words. I wanted to save them all. Evan sat down. The crown blinked red once, then waited. July 16th, 2024. Location: the Crown Room, sublevel, Braxton Estate. The red crown pulsed in silence. Evan stared at it, unmoving. The final note from Claire crumpled in his palm. He could still hear her voice in his head, not the one from the recordings, but the one from their childhood. Braver, warmer. The one that had whispered, "Just follow me. I won't let anything bad happen." Morales stood behind him, watching carefully. "We don't know what happens if you touch it." Evan spoke quietly. "That's the point." A hatch slid open in the wall. Another screen lit up. A new feed. Live. Claire. Older now. Mid-30s. Hair shorter, streaks of gray at the temples. She stood in a dim observation room somewhere else in the facility, behind reinforced glass. She looked straight at the camera. "This isn't about punishment, Evan. It's about what you're willing to carry." He stepped toward the screen. "Then why bring me here?" he asked. Claire blinked slowly. "Because I carried it too long. You were the only one who ever saw me without the numbers. I needed you to see what I became." Evan's voice cracked. "I was a kid. I didn't understand." "You do now." Morales's radio crackled. Dispatch trying to reach her. She silenced it. "We need to shut this place down," she said. "This isn't a therapy program. It's indoctrination. It's ritualized control." Evan shook his head. "No, it's worse." He pointed to the wall where all the names had been. "They're not controlling children. They're training replacements. Each cycle ends with one who forgets, one who replaces. And every few decades, the game restarts." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And they send invitations." Claire's voice returned through the speaker. "The choice is the test. You can walk away now, or you can put it on and remember everything. But if you walk, you won't remember me. Not the real me. Just what they left behind." Evan's eyes welled up. "You think that's mercy? I think it's the only way to end it." He turned to Morales. "I can't let this happen again." She stepped forward. "Then we shut it down together. No more rounds, no more crown." But Claire's voice interrupted. "You don't destroy the crown. You inherit it." The pedestal clicked again. The timer on the wall dropped to 001019. Morales backed away. "We need to evacuate. Now." But Evan stayed rooted. He took the envelope from Claire again, read the final line once more. "I wanted to save them all." He remembered her carrying his sleeping bag that night, guiding him up the stairs, sneaking him one extra cupcake. She wasn't trying to be in charge. She was trying to keep them safe. He looked at the crown. What if she had one? What if this wasn't a punishment at all, but a prison she never escaped? He reached for the crown. Morales shouted, "Evan, don't!" But it was already in his hands. The lights dimmed. The chamber rumbled. Claire's final message echoed once more. One always forgets. The other becomes the door. Then Evan's vision blurred, a sharp pulse of white heat behind his eyes. The room spun. Memory poured in, unfiltered. The ball, the mirror, the fire, Claire screaming. A man in a white coat holding a clipboard, 12 chairs, 11 names, one left standing. When he opened his eyes again, he was alone. The room was silent. The timer gone, the crown gone. Only one item remained, a new envelope sealed with wax. It read, "For the next one." July 17th, 2024. Location: Springfield FBI Field Office. Evan sat in the interview room alone. The lights above him buzzed faintly. He hadn't spoken for nearly 2 hours. Not since Morales brought him in, eyes wild, mouth tight, refusing to explain what had happened beneath the Braxton house. She stood behind the glass now, watching. She'd seen him emerge from the tunnel at dawn. No crown, no Claire, just the envelope in his hand. He hadn't said a word on the drive. He only stared straight ahead, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. Inside the envelope had been 2 things, a cassette tape and a new list. 12 names again, but not from 1993. They were modern. Children born between 2013 and 2015. Some from Missouri, some from Arkansas, one from Chicago, one from Southern Illinois. Beside each, a single word. Invited. The tape played now on the evidence deck in the adjacent room. Morales and a forensic tech listened in grim silence. Claire's voice again. "The crown can't end. It can only move. I gave Evan the choice I never had, and now he'll give someone else the same. Don't look for me. I already left." A pause. He remembers everything now. But the question is, what will he do with it? Evan remained motionless at the metal table. He could hear his own breath. He could feel the crown in his bones now, like it had been buried in him since childhood. All the old dreams, the flashes of light, the whispers at night, the memory of waking in the mansion basement with a red balloon in his lap. He'd thought they were nightmares. They weren't. They were rounds. He looked at his hands, flexed his fingers. On the table sat a new envelope, blank, waiting. Later that night, Morales returned to the Braxton house with a federal team. They cleared the entire structure, every sub-level, every locked door. But the crown room was gone. The observation wing sealed in concrete. All files vanished. Even the tunnel where the crown had been found had collapsed. Only one thing remained in the center of the ballroom. A folding chair, a red balloon tied to it, and a note taped to the seat. Next party begins soon, August 12th, 2024. Location, unknown. A girl sat alone in a waiting room. She looked no older than 11, wore a yellow dress. Her shoes were new. In her lap, a manila envelope with her name on it. No one else sat beside her. A chime sounded. A red door opened, and a woman in a gray blouse and a soft voice said, "Claire will see you now." The girl rose. She smiled and walked through the door.